she said, "Oh yeah, I had to head back to the States because my grandfather died." He was like, "I'm so sorry, my condolences. But when you get back to the States, hit me up. Let's go out for a drink."
I mean, listen, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, I guess.
Where was your empathy? You know, if you had lost your grandfather.
Here's the problem, Dante. You're trying to relate if the situation was reversed. But the problem is with the man, the situation is not the same. Because if he had said, my grandfather passed away, and she said, well, my condolences, but let me know when you're back so I can throw you some he'd be like, you know what? He's not going anywhere.
Let me change my flight so I can meet up with you.
Pop would want me to do this. Life is for the living.
I'm not an alpha male. I'm not a beta male either. I'm just a better man.
It's a funny thing. I was consulting with a guy, this guy, and he met a girl on a plane, and they hit it off, and then the girl like once he got to where he was going, they exchanged numbers, and he called her and she said, "Oh yeah, I had to head back to the States because my grandfather died." Right. And he was like, "Oh, sorry to hear that. I mean, I guess I hope you he goes, I hope you I'm lining this up right behind each other." He was like, "I'm so sorry, my condolences. But when you get back to the States, hit me up. Let's go out for a drink." So it's a funny thing because it's not a funny thing because this woman, she literally lost her grandfather. But the fact that he was like, "Oh, my condolences," and then he just, let me see if I can get this. Let me see if I can get this booty before. Maybe.
I mean, listen, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, I guess. But that's
I guess.
I mean, that one, you're taking that shot from the stands at that point. I mean, that is wild.
I'm listening to this story, right? And
how did you hear this story, by the way?
He was a consultation I did.
Okay. And his problem, what was he consulting with you about? What was he saying?
He basically was saying he had this thing, but he feels like
messed it up.
He dropped the ball, but he didn't see that he dropped the ball, that he asked her out. He just was like, she kind of ghosted me. I haven't heard from her.
So he calls up, he goes, "Yeah, Dante, I don't know, this chick is out of her mind. She just ghosted me for no reason." Then you do some deep diving and you find out.
How about this? It wasn't even deep diving. It was just like, okay, so what happened? Well, yeah, she lost her grandfather and then such and such. And so I do one of these, Harry, like, oh, shit. My scalp itches.
You act like a college basketball coach. You just throw your clipboard down, put your palms in your hands. You're like, what the fuck?
Hey, so the first thing I say is, I go, because I always ask these questions because when you ask questions, you see it really reveals, like I don't throw the clipboard because I want to know what the mentality is. So I said, and this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. This relates to all of it. I said, "Did you realize that her grandfather passed away?" He goes, "Yes." I go, Did you, where was your empathy to comfort her I understand that you're not, that you just met her. But
you're not invested. But still,
doesn't matter that you just met her. Somebody just,
that's the definition of empathy.
Yeah,
it's not. It's trying to have emotions for somebody else, not yourself.
Right. But this is the thing. He even had empathy when it came to it. This is where what I mean by you have to.
Well, he had empathy, but he also had a heart on apparently, and that's unfortunately that wins out, I guess.
It's a little creepy.
Well, it wasn't his grandpa. It would be creepy if it was his grandfather.
It'd be creepy that when she said, "My grandfather passed away." If he got the hard on because of that, he was like, "Yeah,
that would be creepy."
Yeah.
He happened to have a hard on, and then he got the news. So, in all fairness, Dante, let's be fair.
He didn't get the news and then get the hard. Anyway, yeah. So what's really crazy about this is I asked him, and this is the thing, he was empathetic about it, but he was like, I was like, well, if you had if you had lost your grandfather, right? How would you? He goes, well, I said my condolences, but I kept moving on, right?
Here's the problem, Dante. You're trying to relate if the situation was reversed, but the problem is with a man, the situation is not the same because if he had said if the situation was reversed and he was like, hey, listen, my grandfather passed away, and she said, well, my condolences, but let me know when you're back so I can throw you some pussy. He'd be like, you know what? He's not going anywhere.
He goes, listen,
Pop would want me to do this.
Let me change my flight so I can meet up with you.
Life is for the living, goddammit.
So so then here's the other part.
Oh boy.
So I asked him, but this is where it gets really in the weeds.
This is where it goes south. That's not the worst thing that happened.
Not real. So I said, well, let me ask you something. If it was your grandfather, I'm just trying to, and that's empathy. What if it happened to you? Right. He goes, well, I tend to, that's kind of how I deal with death. I lost all four of my grandparents and then I kind of moved on. He said, I just kind of sweep it under the rug. Right. So even in the context of him trying to be empathetic, right? He was being empathetic. He was saying, look, if it was me, I don't really deal with death really well. So I'm just going to sweep it under the rug and keep it moving. Right.
Right. But that's not empathy. That's how you handle it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is empathy because he's saying this is how I would have handled it. And I would want somebody to handle it this way for me. Right. Because I don't want to deal with it. But the point, what I was trying to explain to him is that he was like, I was 10 years old when I lost all four of my grandparents, right? Within the same year, right? And I go, yeah, but do we not know that you not dealing with the emotion of losing your grandparents? Do we think that that's the best way that we should emotionally handle this? And he goes, no, I was 10 years old. And I go, yeah, that's exactly. You're 10 years old. And so you have found a way to cope with your particular pain at 10 years old when you only had the mental capacity of a 10-year-old. You were a child. And your solution to this was sweep it under the rug, right? Move on, shut up, and keep it moving, right? But do you understand that that's not the best way to deal with things emotionally? He goes, oh, sure. He goes, he goes, if that had happened now, I would have had a good cry and I would have mourned. And I go, okay, but the problem is, here's where the problem is. If you love what we're doing here, go to patreon.com. It's the best way to support us and check out all the bonus content.
That's right. Patreon.com/manschool202. We do weekly bonus episodes. We do listener mail, dating tips. And also, if you love the show, you can go back to the archive starting from episode 1. All the episodes will be there at patreon.com/manschool202.
We have trauma that happens when we're young. And based on the limited capacity, when our limited experience, we deal with it in a way that is most comfortable for us, right? Or as a 10-year-old. But what we have to also do is we have to get to a situation where just because we dealt with this trauma at 10 years old, that we're now moving ourselves to a place where I'm 30-something years old, that I don't keep the same process that I dealt with things when I was 10 years old. Why? Because we shouldn't be doing things the way we did them when we were 10. As we grow older, we learn more, we experience more, we have a better understanding of things. And because we have this, we need to reassess how we handle with trauma. We shouldn't be dealing with trauma in the same way as we were when we were 10 years old. And what I was trying to explain to him is that this is not specific to him. Most people who go through trauma learn a way to cope with it, and then they maintain that process in which they cope with that trauma throughout their life, even though they've matured more, they've had more experience, they've had more relationships, they know more, but they still are stuck on the way that they deal with things, the same way. You'll find this if somebody feels insecure, they'll lash out because of the fact that they feel out of control. We need to reassess the way that we operate as human beings as we get older, as we know more, we're supposed to do better. And we can't just go, well, yeah, when I was 10 years old, this is how I acted. The absurdness to think about that this is the way that you would operate at 30 years old, the same way you would operate at 10 years old, is exponentially worse than making a mistake. We talk about this show all the time, and guys come in, and a lot of guys have come here, because of Black Phillip and because of Patrice. And I say this all the time. The way the philosophies have evolved in a way that I don't even think I had the capacity to come up with the answers now that I would come up with now. Back then, it was just a different thing. I've learned more, I've grown more. And so we need to, part of being the best version of ourselves is to take stock of where we are and how we're dealing, even when it doesn't seem as though it's a problem. That something is a problem, we should be checking and rechecking the way that we approach things, because there's always a better way to do it. Even if it's successful now, there's always a better way for us to handle that. And because we've learned and we've gained wisdom, time and energy, that we should readjust the way we deal with this. He understood that that's not how he would have handled having those deaths in his family when he, now, but yet and still, he's still holding this girl to the same standard that he would have held her to at when he was 10 years old. And he doesn't even see that this is a problem, because it hasn't been. This has worked for the most part. And I think what we're always saying is that you have to constantly take stock. The reason why, when I say never let anybody define you, because it won't be long till you ain't shit, I say that because you don't want to give anybody control, that kind of control over you, where your validation is locked into what somebody thinks or what doesn't, or what somebody doesn't think. But to the same token, in order for you to kind of be able to block out the noise and not let people take advantage of you, you have to be the person that scrutinizes yourself, holds yourselves accountable about the way that you respond, and that you're trying to always act better or operate on a higher level of sophistication, because you have more information, more experience, more wisdom, and you have to move forward. And there's never a situation where you should be sitting in that place stagnant. This is good enough. It's never good enough. We say this all the time. We pursue perfection, even though perfection is unattainable, because as you move closer to perfection, it moves further away from you, because you start to see more flaws. But that is what makes you really confident about yourself. The fact that you get the confidence not by what you are, it's by what you do. Are you diligent about being a better person? Are you diligent about being a better human being, or being an emotionally stable human being, that you're not being triggered, that you're not just reacting to situations instead of looking at what's going on from a logical perspective and making the best decisions that are possible. Make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, did you give him any specific advice about trying to fix this specific situation? I mean, it's,
yeah. I mean,
apologizing.
It's really just calling her up and asking and saying, listen, I'm really now. And I told him what I would say, and what I say, it's like, when I say what I say, everybody goes, damn, that's good. But
what would you say? What is the advice? And then how would you say it?
The advice is to call her up and to apologize for not being more empathetic about what your situation was. And I would say, listen, I just want you to know, I wanted to call you and tell you how much it bothered me, the fact that your grandfather died. And I'm not that great with death. I lost 4 of my grandparents when I was younger, and I'm really triggered by this. And I just want you to know that I wasn't it wasn't that I was being inconsiderate. It's just that I really didn't know how to respond to you and the fact that you lost somebody who's close to you. And I want you to know that I'm here for you if you need to talk. And whatever time it takes or whatever you need to get past that, I'm patient with the fact that I'm here waiting to, if you need to talk or if you need something, I'm here. Then you give her an opportunity to say, oh, because when my sister died and you were like, oh, your sister died. And you were like, I was like, yeah, but like my younger sister called me when my middle sister died and we had no relationship. And she was like, she's like, Sharon died. And I was like, yeah, my condolences. Anything else? Moving because we didn't have a relationship. But even when you found out that my sister died, you called up, with the condolences. But I was like, dog, I don't give a fuck about that.
Yeah,
bitch.
I mean, that was more out of courtesy. I knew what your response was going to be because you made that abundantly clear before she passed.
Yeah.
That you would, if anything else came up, you would not attend the funeral. You said I believe the exact quote was, if Fast and the Furious 10 comes out, I'm not going to the funeral.
I said when it came to her burial, I said the only way I will contribute to her burial if they bury her head first down in a 3-foot hole with her fake Louis Vuitton sandals sticking out the top. I go, that's the only way I would contribute if I would dig a 3-foot hole, right? So that her feet was sticking out the top. That's what I would.
That's the only way you would pay for. You said for that, I'll pay for the whole thing.
I will pay for the whole thing. But if you actually want me to, we're actually going to do a cremation. Yeah, I'm not down. You're on your own. So that's where I was at. I'm just saying that you have to be in a situation where as you evolve, you have to constantly take stock. Otherwise, you got to, then when somebody is coming at you and they say, you're this, you're that, you're this, if you haven't taken stock, then you're in a situation where now you're insecure because somebody sees you that you have sees something about you that you haven't seen yourself.
Dante, these couples, they're clearly having relationship problems. If you're having relationship problems or you need life advice, you can always reach out to me for a relationship consultation by emailing me at advicefromharry@gmail.com. Or if you want to get a hold of Dante, how can they get a hold of you so you can help fix their lives?
Just go to DanteNero.com and click on consult. It's all right there. You can book a session.
I'm not an alpha male. I'm not a beta male either. I'm just a better man. Well, put your happiness first, because if you don't, they won't.